Hello everyone. Today's our topic is recovery systems. Recovery systems in database management systems. So you very well know when we will do the recovery of a system. So whenever any transaction failure occurs in a database system, then how you can restore the state of the data of a particular data item. So in this case, you are going to create the log file. So nothing but it is just like an example of creating a backup file. So what is a log file means? Here the log is a sequence of log records which recording all the updations in the database. Nothing but log file is nothing but you are going to write the set of log records. You are going to write the sequence of log records. So generally whatever the data we are going to be stored on the log records is nothing but generally it stores the information about the transaction. It stores the information about the transaction. So nothing but in a database system a multiple number of transactions are going to be executed. So here in this case you are going to define when the transaction will be started, when it executes the read operation, when it executes the write operation, and when the transaction is going to be committed or aborted, or when the transaction is going to be perfectly terminated. So likewise all these sequence of log records we are going to be stored in a log file. So likewise in a recovery system, whenever any transaction is going to be failed, so here going to be used the type of recovery is in the form of log based recovery. So nothing but the log based recovery is nothing but creating a log file. You are going to create the log file. Based upon the log file, you are going to perform you are going to know about the status of the transaction, when it will be executing the read and when it will be executing the write, whatever the value it performs and whatever the value it committed and whatever the value it is going to be, everything is going to be stored in a database. So for this purpose you are going to know the status about the transaction start operation, read operation, write operation and commit operation. So how you can write a log file? So what is a log record? So you are going to define the set of log records. So what is the status of the log record? So here I am writing one example here, the syntax of the log record. So you are going to define the first TI. TI is nothing but here transaction identifier. TI is nothing but here a transaction identifier. Nothing but whether it is a T0 transaction or a T1 transaction or a T2 transaction, it can be defined in a TI. And next is X is nothing but here a data item. So what is the data item? Just like it is an A value or B value or X value or Q value, whatever the value may be. So here we are going to be defined in the X. And after that value 1, V1 and V2. So V1 value, which is nothing but here the old value or the initial value. So V2 is nothing but the new value. So what is the old value? What is the new value means? Whenever a transaction executes the read operation, simply read operation, it reads the initial value, the value which we are going to be calling it as the old value. So and after performing the write operation, the value will be changed, the value will be updated. So for this purpose the new value which we are going to be calling it as here the V2. So for this purpose you are going to define, first thing is the transaction identifier, second one is the data item name, third thing is old value and fourth one is the new value. And this is for we are executing the read and write operations. So the X is performing the read operation as well as the write operation. So this is the way of writing a log record. So then coming to the log based recovery. So how many types of methods we are going to be used for log based recovery? So the first one is going to be calling it as here deferred database modification, and the second type which we are going to be known as here the immediate update database modification. Okay, first one is the deferred database modification and second one is immediate update database modification. Is nothing but by using the log file, which value you can restore, whether you can restore the old value or whether you can restore the new value. So here in this case you are going to identify when the transaction is going to be failed, at the time of start of the transaction or at the time of read operation or at the time of write operation or at the time of commit operation or at the end of the transaction. In which state the failure is going to be occurred. Based upon that, how you can recover. So this can be defined with the two methods. The first method is the deferred database modification. So in this deferred database modification, it is meant for ensuring the property of atomicity. So already we discussed about every transaction must ensures the property of atomicity. So here atomicity property, it ensures that whether a transaction is started, it should be properly committed or it should be aborted. So it should be committed is nothing but the successful completion of the transaction is known as commit. The unsuccessful completion of the transaction is going to be abort. So anyway, the transaction must be committed or aborted, and finally it should be terminated. So likewise, you are going to define the atomicity property. So nothing but deferred database modification, by keeping and by using the log file, you must ensure the atomicity property. Then what are the operations you can perform here? So in order to recover from the failure and to bring the database state into working state, then what are the two set of operations you are going to be performed? The first operation is going to be calling it as the redo operation, and the second operation which we are going to be calling it as the undo operation. Redo operation is nothing but restoring the value with new value. So you are going to update the data item value with the new value. So that what we are going to be calling it as redo. When you will do redo operation, whenever the transaction execute read operation and write operation, and after it is properly committed, and after commit operation, in this case you are going to execute the redo. So for in this case, the transaction value can be restored with the new value. And when you are going to execute the undo operation, you are going to restore the value with old value. So nothing but before commit operation, whether a transaction fails before commit. So before commit is nothing but the changes are not propagated to the database. So the updated operations are not restored in the database or disk. So for this purpose, in this case, the data is going to be stored on the local buffer and the local variable value. So for this purpose, you are going to initialize with the old value. So in this case, you are going to use the operation called undo. Okay. So to ensure the atomicity property and to complete the transaction entirely, you are the one of the mechanism is here keeping the log file, and in the log file you can restore the value with two operations. One is redo operation and second one is undo operation. Redo the transaction is nothing but restoring the value with the new value. Nothing but when you will do redo operation after commit. So before commit we are going to perform the undo. In this case you are going to be restored with the old value. So let us see the example. So here in the we can define the example here. So in already we discussed the banking system example here. Here the two transactions is going to be executed. The first transaction is going to be calling it as T0, and the second transaction is going to be calling it as here T1. In the T0 transaction, the funds are going to be transferred from account A to account B. The 50 rupees are going to be transferred from account A to account B, and in the T1 transaction, that 100 rupees are going to be withdrawn from account C. Okay. So T0 transaction which transfers the funds from account A to account B, and T1 transaction withdraws the amount of 100 rupees from account C. So likewise we are preparing one schedule. So likewise you can read the value and you can write the value, and you can read the B account and you can write the B account. So this is a serially executed T0, and after the execution of T0, the T1 transaction will be starts, and T1 transaction reads the value of C, and 100 rupees will be deducted from account C, and it writes the value of C. Then how you can whenever the schedule is going to be executed, parallelly you can create the log file. So this log file is going to be used for our backup. So nothing but whenever during the execution of this transaction and automatically the system fails, the system crashes, any transaction failures occurs intermediately. So in order to know about the status of the particular transaction, parallelly you are going to create the log file, and this log file can be used as a backup file for restoring the database values. Okay. So how you can create the log file? First, initially the T0 transaction is going to be started. So you can write T0 start, and after that T0 is executing the read operation. So, reading the data item, what is the data item name? The data item name is here A, and at the same time it is performing the write operation. So, reading operation and write operation. Initially what is the value of A value? The account value is here 1000 and it performs the write operation, and here the funds are going to be transferred 50 rupees. So, 1000 minus 50. So, here the total balance is 950. So, A is a data item, T0 is a transaction, T0 transaction reads the data item value A is 1000 rupees and it writes the operation of 950, means the 50 rupees are going to be transferred from account A. So, in this case then automatically in the T0 transaction the funds will be added to B. So, nothing but it executes the read operation of B, and initially what is the value of B? The value of B is here 2000 and 50 rupees will be added to 2000. So, now the value is here 2050. So, here T0 is a transaction identifier, B is a account, nothing but data item name. It reads the initial value 1000 and 50 rupees are going to be added from account A to account B. So, this is the new value. So, this is the old value, 2000 is the old value and 2050 is the new value. So, likewise the T0 transaction is going to be completed. Then afterwards T1 transaction starts. So, T1 start. Then afterwards T1 reads the data item, the data item name is C. So, here it reads the data item value 700, then the funds 100 rupees are going to be transferred deducted from account C. So, likewise the new value is 600. So, this is the log file. So, likewise whenever a schedule is going to be executed, so parallelly you are going to create the log file, and this log file used as a backup file. Whenever a transaction fails, by using the status of this log file you can restore the value. By using this you can perform two operations, either you can redo or you can undo. If there is any commit, then you are going to perform the redo operation. If there is no commit for the particular transaction, then you are going to undo. So, based upon the log file you are going to perform the redo operation and undo operation. Then likewise what are the conditions and when the transaction will be committed or when the transaction will be what is the status of the database in the values of account A and account B. So, you should see the same is going to be created, T0 starts and the initial value of A and initial value of B, and after performing write operation T0, let us take the T0 transaction is going to be commit. So, and after the T0 transaction immediately T1 transaction start and T1 transaction executes and T1 is also commit. So, then what are the values of both account A, account B and account C? So, after the funds are going to be transferred, if it is a commit operation is going to be executed for the T0 transaction, the value of A is 950 and the value of B is 2050, and after commit of transaction T1, the value of C is here 600. So, let us see and this is what exactly defines for the database values, and whenever we are going to be create log file, and we should see when whenever any failure is going to be occurred. So, in which situation the failure is going to be occurred, so how you can recover, and when you will execute the redo operation and when you will execute the write operation. So, what is in three conditions we are going to be defined. So, in the first situation, if a failure occurs in three situations. So, for the first condition is failure occurs after write of B. So, if a failure occurs after write of B. So, for example, log T0 starts, T0 executes the both read and write operation and T0 executes both read and write operation. So, after write of B, then automatically a system failure occurs. Then how you can restore the value in a database? How you can restore the value of a database? Whether you are going to execute the redo or whether you are going to execute the undo. So, if there is no commit, so there is no commit means you are going to perform undo operation. Undo of which transaction? The transaction is T0. Undo means restore the database values with initial values, with nothing but with old values. It means T0 reads both A and B and performs write operation, but not yet committed. So, not yet committed means you are going to execute the undo operation of transaction T0. So, finally, you are going to restore the values of A and B with initial values. Now, the values of A is 1000 and value of B is equal to 2000. So likewise you are going to keep the data values of A and B in the database after a failure occurs. Then moving to the second situation. So the failure occurs just after the log record write C of T1 transaction. So after T1 transaction is going to be completed. So after T1 transaction executes write operation, then how the database state? So nothing but how you can restore the values of A, B and C. So here A, B writes the database and T0 is going to be committed. So here the T0 transaction commit means its changes are propagated to the disk, means it is properly updated on the database. So for this purpose you are using the commit transaction. So for this purpose you are going to redo of which transaction? T0 transaction. Then you are going to restore the values of A and B. Restore the values of A and B with new values. So A value is here 950 and B value is here 2050. So likewise you are going to restart, and after write of C the transaction is going to be failed. So what then? What you have to do for the transaction T1? So here there is no commit. So for this purpose you are going to perform undo of which transaction? T1. So you are going to keep the value of C with initial value, old value, the old value is equal to 700. So if there is any commit, then you are going to use the redo and restore the values with the new values, means updated values. Why? Because it is already changed in the database. So for this purpose you are going to restore the database values with the new values. Then you are moving to next one, T1, nothing but the next transaction. It reads and writes the C data item, but there is no commit for the T1 transaction. So for this purpose you are going to execute undo. Undo means here it is not properly updated. So for this purpose you are going to restore the values with the old value, nothing but initial value. The C value is going to be calling it as here 700. Next, the failure occurs just after the log record T1 commit. So in the third situation, if T1 is going to be committed, means T1 commit means T0 is also committed and T1 is also committed. So for this purpose you are going to execute the redo of T0 transaction. So for this purpose the values of A equal to 950 and B equal to 2050, and similarly T1 C 700 600, and after that T1 is also properly committed. T1 transaction is also properly committed. So in this situation, so the commit operation is going to be executed. Similarly you are going to execute redo of T1. So finally the value of C is equal to 600. So likewise you are going to update. So in three situations the failure occurs, then how you can redo, undo, and how you can redo. So for this purpose you are going to, if there is any commit operation, then you are going to execute the redo operation. If there is no commit and simply it performs read and write operation, then you can execute the undo. Redo means you can restore the new value, undo means you can store the value with the initial value or old value. Okay. So likewise we are going to recover the database system whenever any failure occurs during the execution of transaction. You can recover the system with new value as well as old value. Okay. Hope you understood. Thank you.